let me begin by acknowledging that we are all viewing and participating in this presentation on traditional territories of Indigenous people of Turtle Island, and we want to recognize their contribution to this place and express our gratitude for our ability to come together and learn today. I also want to express my and our solidarity with people who are working, struggling, striving against systemic oppressions of all sorts. And I hope COVID-19, if there's one thing we've learned, is to create more equitable, more um, the unevenness that we have seen in terms of health care disparities, we lessen it and make it more egalitarian, equitable world. Okay, so you guys were very kind and you submitted the questions, and I carefully looked at those questions, and these are the themes that emerge from those questions. Um, Resilience, how to use resilience to overcome our trauma. That was one of the questions. What are the limitations of adaptation? Another word he used for resilience is adaptation. And what is the role of genes? So it's the upper ceiling of our genetic limitations. What is resilience on day-to-day basis? Homeschooling. There was a question about homeschooling, preparing children for the real life challenges. Resilience, pressure of grades. So some of you parents are wondering, as I am a parent of two teens, the pressure of grades and academic achievement in an increasingly intensely competitive world. Worried, there was a question about young person not having adult skill, and moving into 18 plus. And what's the teen resilience looks like during lockdown? So I weave those questions into my outline. So I will first invite to consider some definitions of resilience so that we have some sort of understanding what it is. And then I'm going to ask you your input that what depletes your resilience, especially in the context of COVID. Then the first question that I will try to weave my answer is resilience in everyday life. And what's the role of for negativity and pessimism in sort of depleting it? What's the role of positive emotions in creating more fostering more positive relationship and more positive families? Question about resilience of lockdown, resilience of teen during the lockdown will come, and especially the role of social media. If you look at the emerging research, that is very telling, because we our kids and our teens have been in front of screens for all intensive purposes, for educational and otherwise, for close to 15 months in many cases. What's the role of character strengths in fostering, overcoming challenges, including trauma? And what's the strength-based resilience, the program that I run? And how families can be supported? That was another question. And preparing teen for real life challenges. What's the role of purpose? So that's a kind of a rough outline. So what is resilience and what depletes it? Okay. So if you look at the definition of resilience, just 2 weeks ago, which I was fortunate to work with these wonderful individuals, Dr. Jane Gillum, Steve Leventhal, and to my students, Zachary and Harry, to publish this chapter about resilience in post-secondary settings. And we looked at different definitions. There are many different ways you can define resilience. So the most prevalent one is an ability, attribute, or a trait. When you say a trait, it does have some underpinnings of genetics, because it's kind of a personality disposition. Some people also define and view resilience as an outcome, a trauma, a challenge came, like COVID-19, and how, as a resilient community, we dealt with it. The outcome, which you can measure in concretely, is known as resilience. Resilience is process. It is process of adapting. process of bouncing back, process of dealing, marshaling all your resources. And it's hybrid, it's everything. Because it includes so many facets, I will probably go to D, that it includes many, and the jury is still out. I was reading this earlier today. The underpinning genetic underpinnings of resilience, that I wish I could tell you there were 5 genetic and uh, neurotransmitters, which are genes and neurotransmitters, neuromodulators, which are responsible or explain bulk of our resilience. There aren't, because it's almost always the interaction between your personality and genes, and your genes that comes from personality, and the environment. So that's the complexity, and perhaps the beauty of it as well. Because if you say someone won a genetic lottery about being so resilient, so how about the other folks who may have some inborn disadvantages? Unfortunately, we do not live in an equal world. We live in uh, glaringly unequal world. So in this, from that perspective, it's good to have a definition which includes both the biological, neurological, genetic markers, but those markers interact in a complex way with the environment. I want you to review your last 15 months, year plus in COVID. What are the challenges you have faced, and how those challenges have depleted your resilience, your well being, or your family's well being? Let's start with your first. What are those challenges? I'm going to show you a list of those, and we'll go to Mentimeter in a bit. But let's start with, when you look at the literature, emerging literature, health anxiety is one of the big one, and it still continues even though our vaccination rate has improved significantly in the last couple of weeks. Media. Uh, Not everyone has positive relationship with media, or not everyone is aware that how media has might have been impacting their well-being, especially when it comes to the consumption of media by our children. Uncertainty, we still don't know when exactly this invisible virus will be able to manage it successfully or adaptively. Online learning, families have been dealing with online learning, online schooling, um, and lots of challenges they have experienced in that domain. Family 24/7. So those who moved back, the extra responsibilities. Number of my clients and students that I work with, they moved back home, and after honeymoon period of a couple of weeks, they started sharing with me the challenges of sharing the bandwidth, sharing the space. To a great extent, that might be still the arrangement in multi-generational and culturally diverse home, where interdependent or collectivist cultural norms are more prevalent. Boredom. The things we used to do, it's from sports to recreation to entertainment, all of it has been closed. And now we have to find, and our kids have to find. My two teenage boys are often, they tell me they are bored to death, and I run out of any options. What else we can do? There's very limited things. Loneliness, and loneliness is a very different from social isolation. Loneliness is a subjective feeling. So social isolation is you don't remain connected. So you can also incorporate loneliness and social isolation in this one, but more about feeling that you're alone, that is meant here. Loss, we have lost, unfortunately, our loved ones, or they have lost their health status and not have regained it. Lots of parents and families have lost employment, or the employment have been changed. The arrangement have been changed and not regained to the pre-pandemic level. Negativity and pessimism have set in. um, I do worry about the mental health repercussions of in the long-term mental health repercussions. And if you put everything together, pandemic fatigue. So now let's go back to Menti to rank what depletes or what has depleted in last 15 months your resilience. Please rank order from most stressful, most impactful to the least. So if you go to the Menti, it will give you the list of these 10. I just went through those, and all you need to do is to rank order. So we will see. So the this is a synthesis of the emerging research. Okay, we have the first entry. Family 24/7. So two people, pandemic fatigue is hitting uncertainty came first, and now entries will come real fast. Online learning. Uh, I'm not surprised. Pandemic fatigue now moved to sixth place. Media is eighth. Uncertainty is, and I will shuffle my slide just based on your results. Make some notes here. I'll give you some time. Uncertainty. All right, so we have 14 entries and 15. Uncertainty continues to be the number one challenge that you guys have faced. Negativity, pessimism, pandemic fatigue, online learning, family 24/7. Okay, so top five. Okay, so I will try my best to address at least all those five points. I'm not sure if I can, will have time to address everything else, but I'll try my best. So uncertainty, negativity, pandemic fatigue. Okay, so let's start with the uncertainty. Uncertainty, big one. This is the first time in human history, close to 4 billion people in the third week of March 2020, they went into some sort of mass quarantine or lockdown, nearly 200 countries in the world. And we are still, almost most of those countries are in one way or the other, with the exception of few. Even we prided on, and Australia has done well. Just yesterday, they found a cluster of cases in Melbourne. um, we are still dealing with the lockdown, and lockdown is not easy because we don't know when this will be over, and we never had we had to experience such a thing of things that we used to take we used uh, to take it for granted. So one of the things that when you look at the research, when you're facing uncertainty, telling your family members and yourself that, tolerate uncertainty, tolerate ambiguousness. And just deal with it. It probably is not very helpful. What I have found, and what research has found, is that we need to teach people to act. ACT, action changes things. Act despite uncertainty, because we will never have enough information, all the information in the world, to be certain and then take action. So rather than being paralyzed, the first step you want to do is decide what amount or degree of certainty is sufficient for you to act, especially for things that you are unable to do and you need to do as to function as a family, to function as a parent. Let me repeat it. What amount of degree or certainty is sufficient for you to act? The second one is, when you're doing so, please don't underestimate the risk or overestimate your abilities. That's a fundamental mistake often people make. We have all, and when you look at cognitive literature, we all have this optimistic bias. Oh, this thing is going to happen to all others. I'm not, it's not going to touch me. And the classic example of this is about 70% of the drivers believe that they are in the 90th percentile. So it's not possible that majority of the drivers believe that they are the top 10 percentile of the top 10% drivers. So we have this inherent positivity optimistic bias. Because of that, we underestimate the risks and overestimate our abilities. And this was not any more glaring in the early days of pandemic, when majority of our people and families, individuals abided by the social distancing rule, and some said, I'm not going to do it. Guess what? Unfortunately, unless everyone, as you have heard the expression, unless everyone is not vaccinated, or majority of people not vaccinated, we won't have the safety feeling of safety, because anytime the virus can flare up again. So don't overestimate your abilities because of the optimistic bias, because your odds of contracting a disease or any other illnesses are equal as they are in the population. What you need to do is the third step: decide what key pieces of information are critical for you to act, rather than I will get all the information or maximum amount of information and then I will act, and because that will quash or decrease my anxiety. We are living in age of anxiety. Unfortunately, it has skyrocketed in among our teens, and especially since 2008 and 10, around this time, there's a big spike in anxiety. All you need to do at that point, when something is not helping you to act, to function as a family, is what key pieces of information are necessary or sufficient for you to act. If you cannot still decide and you have a narrow window of uncertainty, consult. But consult with someone who is wise, who is not afraid to give you the things that you may not like to listen, but they are still important for you to listen. Okay. The second part also is very important, is positive emotions. In order to deal with uncertainty, because we are inherently biased towards negativity, and our negativity bias often does a couple of things to us. One of them is that we give more weight to negative information. So negative news, negative interactions, negative impressions, we give far more weight. I'll give you a very simple example from Gallup's founder, Don Gallup. In about 15, 20 years ago, did an experiment, called up, Gallup is the biggest organization of conducting surveys in the world, called up 3,000 plus people, parents, and asked them a simple question. Your child brings 4 grades to you. 3 of them are A's, 1 of them is B. Which grade you are most likely to discuss first? I can't see you, but if I would see, I would probably surmise that your answer would be B. And I think even I might be, despite knowing all this information, I may in a knee-jerk reaction to why does B? Because we give more weight for some reason to negative information. Under stress like COVID, our attention and effort is diverted towards dealing with the stressors, because there were a whole set of new stresses that families have to face. And when we don't have skills to deal with those stresses, and the exposure is prolonged, that is when the negativity and pessimism sets in. And that is when we start seeing the escalation into depression, anxiety, and many host of other mental health issues. So the best way to deal with the negativity is to cultivate more positive emotions. So what are the positive emotions that will offset this negativity? Look at this. These are simple actions we all are capable of doing. Who among this audience is not capable of playing, even for a 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes, small playfulness? So invoke your playfulness, because when you will play with your child, with your family, small little things, you don't need many instruments, you don't need many gadgets. You will cultivate the emotion of joy. When you will savor a sunset, uh, provinces are encouraging us to go out and look and be in nature and savor nature, savor food, savor any positive memories, you will feel grateful. When you will savor, another aspect of savor is it gives you feeling of serenity. You feel peaceful. You feel fulfilled. When you explore, when our children explore, they feel the positive emotion is of interest. When you want to see things changes, that's look, why are you here? You want some changes in your life. You're yearning for change. You have hope. And hope was one of the positive emotions that we saw in the beginning of the first exercise that we did. You all have big dreams for yourself, for your family, for your children. And you want and look at the dreams and accomplishments. You feel pride. You will take pride in what things hurdles that you overcame. When you share laughter, you create emotional amusement, and you can see all the others. And the last one is most important one. When you do all of these actions, you create bonds of love, and love is the supreme positive emotions, which has this amazing sort of a reset button. When you experience love, even though the relationship may not be perfect with your loved one, with your um, children, but a pure moment of love can connect people. And we have seen the biochemistry of it. The oxytocin in a pregnant female floods when we touch each other in a safe way. There is the feeling of connection makes us feel better. So do small little things. I'm not asking you to do big things, because when you do small little actions, this will generate what you're seeing on the right side, upward spiral. And those positive emotions are contagious. The contentment will give way to hopefulness, optimism, and exploration, enthusiasm, passion, zest, hope, etc. And you can see, look at the other side. When you are pessimistic, as I said, when you experience negative emotion, exposure is too long, the boredom, the frustration, the negativity is also has a contagious effect. And remember, negative information, negative emotions weigh much more heavily than positive ones. Tell me, if again, I can't see you, but I'm in a metaphorical sense, I'm seeing you. What weighs more for you, grudge or gratitude? Oftentimes it's the grudge that weighs heavily more on you than the gratitude, because research has also shown positive emotions tend to be more fleeting, but they are still much more important to build the resilience, your resilience, and resilience your family. Okay. um, there are certain ways we can cultivate those positive emotions. Create micro moments of positivity. Create at least 5 positive experience daily with your loved ones, smiling, laughing, hugging, sharing a cup of coffee or tea, brief text if the person is not next to you, email emoticons, and virtual messages can be any way that any form or shape that can connect you. Gratitude journal. You notice positive things in the beginning. You almost what we created a collective gratitude journal for positive things. So before you go to bed, recall 3 positive, no matter how small but genuine positive experiences, and write them. Or in some cases, discuss with your loved one and end your day at that, not on a screen. As I say, emotion contagion. Socialize with friends and people who like to laugh. There's a study, Misery Loves Company. If most of your company is miserable, having some mental health challenges, it will weigh heavily on you. Nature and physical activity, the meta-analysis, the big research when we compile all the studies together and look at the overall impact, we are seeing that 20 minute or more daily walk in nature or spending time in nature uh, safeguards you, buffers you against depression. And doesn't matter that you are in a very naturalistic setting or in a city. They control for this. Practice compassion. Start your day with a goal to refrain from doing any harm to others in thoughts, words, or actions. Again, you will get these slides. So these are the ways your families can, you and your families co-create these positive emotions, which can be so helpful. Now, let me move towards the second part, which one of them was about uncertainty and negativity, but also one of the questions was what happens with that? How can we prepare our teenagers to deal to cultivate more resilience in them? Okay, so we were not fighting. We are still not fighting just one pandemic, folks. We are fighting two pandemics. One is the pandemic, of course, obviously of uh, coronavirus, but also there is an infodemic. There was a This was the first pandemic in human history which was deeply digital. And when I say deeply digital, um, we we were already seeing the trends in teenagers, that the more time they were spending on social media, it was uh, harmful for their mental health. Now, their time, now multiply that with the disaster, such as pandemic. So what happened is some parents, some families had no option but a freewheeling because they had now they were households with the offices moved back to home and the freewheeling of screen time. So perhaps in the beginning that was okay, but in the long run, it's not going to be very helpful for you and your young children, teenagers. So what I did is I'm a social scientist, so I always look for a guidance from science. So this is a recent paper published, and it talks about consensus guidance, and it's free available. You can download the free paper. The entire paper is preventing problematic internet usage during COVID-19, and I have summarized those recommendations. The full references are there. You can again download the PDF copy. It's so important that you maintain a routine in a flexible way. Plan your day with your children, what you want to do, what you want to accomplish in studying, physical activity, socialization. Have some structure, not too rigid, but having a routine is very important. If there's one thing, if you will ask me, if nothing else you can fix, if you can fix or if you can regulate sleep of your children or sleep of the family, uh, increasing amount of research is showing it has such a positive effect and such a detrimental effect of not sleeping enough for children. Their cognitive, their attentional span is just goes haywire when we cannot regulate their sleep. Almost every second client that I see, I have a clinical practice at U of T Scarborough campus. Every second or third student who comes for therapy, I only see students. I do not have private practices, disclaimer, because I need my own sanity. I Sleep is a big issue. It's a very big issue. So if I could have a magic wand to fix sleep, because when you sleep, you eat. Good sleep is often attached to good hygiene, good eating, healthy eating. Physical activity, I just described. It's so important because when you engage in physical activity, even 20 minutes, it reduces the stress hormones. And on the other hand, it actually produces the endorphins, the natural chemicals which your brain produces to relieve you from stress. Family time, meaningful conversations, have a topic theme, discuss world affairs, what's happening in the world, in the age appropriate times. Watch something together. If there's a good, more adaptive use of media, is have watch something on YouTube as a family about any documentary. Just wonderful things are also being produced. Household projects, fixing some things, spring cleaning, and recall positive reminiscence as the positive memories, the things pre-pandemic, things that you enjoyed, watch the pictures, and build hope for tomorrow. Media, stick to only media which is reliable and has use it sparingly but reliable usage. Freewheeling just every website or anything that people forward you, don't believe it. Media literacy is so important for you and for your children as well. um, these were all the journal guidelines from the consensus. These consensus guidelines were produced by 31 different departments around the world. So the specific one is teach yourself and your kids how to monitor themselves, because we often, when we go to start looking at the social media, we we actually, studies show we lose the sense of time. So use any devices that will help you to monitor that amount of time that you're spending. And when you want to put some limits on your kids, negotiate the limits. Don't just suddenly turn the Wi-Fi off. Use tools, screen timers, some apps are available, and also ask for the feedback about the time spent. How was it your time? Because when teens are just spending time aimlessly, they don't feel good about it. um, Notifications. There's a study, it's called cascading effect. We subscribe to so many apps, and these apps then just take over your life. And every time you look and your smartphone is giving you a notification, someone has tweeted, someone has posted, and there's a natural, because it's become so convenient. So only use essential one notifications. Co-create rules, mutually agreed upon rules, and those rules should be written, visible, clear, and flexible. Don't enforce those rules in a very rigid way. Aimless surfing versus adaptive online surfing. So help children to understand that when they are aimlessly surfing from one website to another, what is that, how does that feel? And oftentimes my clients will tell me, I've spent like 3 hours, Dr. Rashid, and I couldn't do anything. From Instagram I went to this link went to this. There's something called, these guidelines talk about adaptive online surfing. Again, I don't have time to go into details, but again, this is something you can read the paper or educate yourself and discuss with your children. Screen-free family activities, board games. Where all good board games? Where have they gone? We need to bring them back. Outdoors activities, backyard, badminton, ping pong, baseball, soccer, anything, plus collaborative home improvement project, cleaning projects. Also, use analog technical tools, wrist watch, rather than having a smartwatch to uh, that can be also very helpful. Alarm clocks, because when we digitize everything, we overuse them. Connect with alternative ways. So we now, as 15 months in, we have now, everyone is now talking about Zoom fatigue. All of us have experienced that Zoom fatigue, and even one expression of that is, I am speaking with you through Zoom. I would love to be in person with you, but where had the good old telephone have gone? Where in my own lifetime, I've seen the handwritten notes, the Christmas cards, the greeting cards. Where have they gone? Perhaps this is a time we revive them, because that will also slow us down. If still you or your family or kids are struggling, seek professional help. Because there are some programs which, if there's lots of tension between you and kids and you cannot manage that, there are programs which can help you to acquire some skills. And also, sometimes you need another third party, a professional, to negotiate the terms and conditions for more adaptive, healthier usage of media. Um, I'm mindful of time, and let me move towards the more important part, which will bring resilience. As I said to you, one of the things we also saw in the first five things was the negativity bias, or negativity or pessimism, because we are geared towards looking for negative things. We often say, "What's wrong with you?" We rarely say what's right with you. Even if we spot it, we don't say it, we don't articulate it. Okay. So if I would ask you, those who are parents or counselors, or in any capacity you work with young people or with your loved one, what are your loved ones, your partners, your child's top five strengths? Sometimes we can very clearly and very quickly articulate, oh, these are the challenges that I face. They don't do the homework on time, they don't do the household chores, or my partner is always lazy. Or we can, it doesn't take much time for us to run down the list of complaints and negative attributes. Since when and negative um, have weighed much more and positive weighed much less since eternity? But I think it's time for us to retweak that balance, because if we don't, and we pay far more attention to negatives, uh, this pandemic has taught us to take a look at ourselves and at our loved ones. This is a time to spot their strengths. I'm not saying spot their strengths in a superficial manner, but in a real manner. So I work with strengths. So um, how many of you can spot these specific strengths in your loved ones? Creativity, perspective, judgment, curiosity, honesty. So we're going to do an exercise, and I'm going to move you towards Mentimeter. What we'll be doing is identifying your top strengths. This actually taps to the question which was asked: how can we help our teens during lockdown? Okay, there are the font is small, but once you open the page, you will see 24 strengths, though you just saw those 24 strengths on the slide. But this time you're going to see those slides, those strengths in a slideshow, and this comes from the courtesy of New Zealand Institute of Wellbeing and Resilience. So when I play this slideshow, watch all the 24 strengths, and there's a brief description. And once you finish, in the Menti, you will select your five strengths. Do not think too much, but I want to have you a dialogue with yourself from the perspective of your strengths, because once you know your strengths, then you can spot the strengths of your loved one as well. All right, let's move back to Menti and see. We have five people so far entered. This group has strength in spirituality. You can enter up to six. I just, but six that appeals to you. You think that's the best representation of yourself. Humor, leadership, kindness, love. Oh, spirituality is going up. Seven folks have kindly entered their strengths. Spirituality, love, leadership, hope, and gratitude is not too far away. Love, this is a loving group. Kind, spirituality continues to be the top one. Uh, all right, so what we see here is you have, however, it's the beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. We just gave you some cues, some pictures, some descriptions. Based on that, you this group seems the overwhelming strength is spirituality, love, hope, that actually matches with our initial positive emotions that you did in the first one, and open-mindedness. So thank you. So let me move back, and how I'm going to weave this back. This actually respond to one of the questions that was asked by um, uh, one of the participants. They asked a question that how we can use the lens of resilience and strengths to overcome a trauma. So this is what we do in our program is start with the narrative of resilience, then equip our students, participants with some flexible thinking, elicit their strengths, and teach them how to use those strengths to foster positive relationships, and how to create more meaning. We have done these are lessons. This is We had an artist draw all these lesson plans and the illustrations for these lessons. I just um, in sharing, we also cover empathy, slowness. Each lesson begins with a mindfulness and ends with a mindfulness. And we had implemented the program in 5 high school in Toronto, and also in post-secondary settings. And we do lots of workshops along with the program. And you can see there's a very action experiential program. And we also have incorporated lots of movement and relaxation and mindfulness in the program. Now, I'm mindful of time, and let me end my presentation at two things that I want to share. One was one of the participants asked about um, their child is getting 18 or above, and they still feel that they haven't acquired the skill. So again, much like you have spotted your strength, start with the perspective of strength. What is that strength of your child, and how can you amplify those strengths? And oftentimes we have this fear from either coming from perfectionistic tendencies or many other things. And we have this fear of failure. So it's so important that we tap onto the strengths of our young people, our institutions, schools, families need to tap on, because our students, our young people are also bored. I want to conclude on meaning, but before meaning, I want to share with you the notion of flow. Look, we all experience these on the left hand side: anxiety, worry, apathy, these feelings. But often there's everyone who's listening to me have experienced flow. Flow is experienced when you are deeply immersed in something that you absolutely like. It's not too difficult, not too easy. You have some idea where you're going. It's the kind of experience which athletes describe it in the zone. So cultivate such with the help of your children's strengths. Set the conditions for flow. You can find this in a wonderful book by Csikszentmihalyi on flow, small one, not very an accessible book. How to cultivate flow in families, in education, even at work, that can help our families to build resilience and foster positive relationship, and also be more self-sufficient. So they're always not looking for the external stimulation. One of the most common things you will hear from your children: I'm bored. Okay, so exploration is when young people are exploring, foster their curiosity. There are a couple of strategies that I'm not going to. You will get the slides. Incorporating art and movement is very important. You will get the slides. So let me end my presentation at the another question was asked about How can we support families to foster positive relationships? It is so important that this pandemic has taught us the importance of things that we took for granted. And one of those things was we took for granted was we did not connect with our loved one. So this is the time, even if you have lived in the proximity of 24/7, have uninterrupted conversation with your loved one, with your child. And a good rule of thumb for you is to ask yourself, am I listening to my child, to my loved one, to my partner, to my colleague, to my parent, and the way I would like to be listened? Very simple, but it's, everyone wants to be listened. You want to be listened, but ask yourself that are you being listened, are you listening? Let yourself be vulnerable. Oftentimes people feel so um, um, vulnerable in the sense that they don't trust the other relationship. The trust is built through vulnerability, sharing your vulnerability. Yes, be mindful with whom you're sharing. Oversharing can also be problematic, but especially with your loved one, oftentimes you don't know the inner lives of your loved ones. So building the trust, having communication, having conversation during pandemic, is an opportunity to be vulnerable and also share their vulnerability. Let them be vulnerable. Let your loved one influence you. Oftentimes we hear that I'm strong enough, I can survive, but let your loved one influence you. During pandemic, we also saw during the middle and late phases, we saw the tension escalating in homes. So I'm not talking about the big forgiveness, the capital F forgiveness. To foster resilience in family, you need to have a healthy dose of forgiveness tucked in your stash, and use it. Don't not be afraid to use it. So these are some of the conversations that I have also published from research, but also with my clients when they got entangled in argument with their loved one. Conversation starters for forgiveness and for reconciliation. It doesn't harm to saying that I don't blame you for being upset, because you're showing empathy, acknowledging your part. Oftentimes there are two sides of a story. So acknowledging your part, asking yourself, I would like to take specific steps that this doesn't happen again. I now realize how much you have felt. If you're a child, if you're a parent, also sometimes empathize how the child has or the teen has have felt. And the teens who are listening, if you are getting lots of advices and suggestions from your older folks, which is quite common in many communities, rather than becoming you know reacting and becoming defensive and are getting upset, just acknowledging that they might be coming from a very good place. They may not be familiar with the millennial norms of the generation Z, X, or Z, whatever might be, but just acknowledging their understanding is very important. So let me finish. The last part is how we want to create meaning in our life. The meaning is not a big thing for me. The meaning is created by um, day in, day out kind of activities. And the first thing I would say, have some spontaneous family dinner in the park, if whenever guidelines allow us. Even now, members of the same bubble can go out together. Just follow the your local guidelines. Shopping for ingredients to cook together, trying new recipes, playing board games, casually playing sports, shooting hoops in the backyard, or ping pong or badminton. These are all the spontaneous activities. They don't need prep, but they will foster the positive bonds among families. Um, You also want structured one. Whenever the life allows us back, family vacations, outdoor adventures, picnics, camping, all the cultural activities, hopefully we'll be able to do. If you don't can't do it, plan for it. Have the tuck those ideas in your head, in your mind, that these are the ingredients of fostering resilience and happiness in your family. Also keep in mind, we have spirituality is one of the big strengths in this group. Um, uh, Whatever the notion of spirituality is, you ascribe to, mm, invite your child to be a participant in whatever they want to be, rather than enforcing them. Just sharing stories of religious traditions, festivals, cultural, artistic, and sports one as well. The last and not least, meaning. Um, there is no resilience, there's no well-being without a sense of purpose. So one of the questions was asked, how can we help our children, especially going into adulthood? It's very important that you share this sense of purpose, and your values with your young ones, and you articulate it for yourself, because a resilient and well-being life does have a meaning, does have a purpose. Doesn't need to be grand purpose that you need to change the state of the world. It can be small, but it has the, you see yourself an actor, a player to shape the future of your life and the life beyond you. You're not only doing this for yourself. Think of this meaning a journey from one place to another, from one time to another. And who is in this journey with you? Your meaning will become much more poignant and much more uh, streamlined if you share it with your loved one. And there are strategies to cultivate more meaning and purpose in your life, in your family's well being and resilience. And with that, I am very happy to take any questions